Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I've got a vaccine story about COVID-19 for you tonight. I want to introduce you to Madame Nathalie Landry, who is the Executive Vice President of Scientific and Medical Affairs for a company in Quebec City called Medicago. Is that correct, Medicago?
That's perfect.
And Medicago is a vaccine manufacturer, and they've also developed their own COVID-19 vaccine. We haven't heard much about them. They're in phase 2 clinical trials right now, and they hope to get approval and start distributing it in the summer. Ms. Landry, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Very well, thank you. So you're calling us into us from Quebec City, I understand.
Yes, that's correct. So our manufacturing facility is based in Quebec City. We have one in North Carolina in US, and we're building a larger scale manufacturing facility in Quebec City as well. So we're getting prepared to be able to provide a significant number of doses.
Excellent. We hear a lot about, the Pfizer and the Moderna and the AstraZeneca and the J&J that have got approved so quickly. Why are you behind?
So it's a different manufacturing technology. So we produce recombinant protein. So we need a living system to produce the vaccine, contrary to the currently approved vaccine that are more chemical synthesis. So this is why they were a bit faster at producing the first doses. For recombinant proteins, that is a more traditional approach. We're in the front runners, so it's not longer than anybody else using a living system. And what is unique about Medicago is that we use plants as the platform to produce the vaccine. And this is totally unique to our company.
And what are the plants that you're using?
So they're called Nicotiana bentamiana. So it's a close relative of tobacco. So it's a cousin of tobacco plants, but not the same as the one used to produce cigarettes. So we use that plant, and we ask the plant to produce a vaccine against a target indication. And what the plant is able to do is to produce virus-like particles. So they will be expressing the protein and assembling it in a shape and form that looks like the virus, but it's non-infectious. Cannot replicate, it's not a virus, it looks like a virus. And this type of vaccine is a very efficient vaccine to protect against infectious disease.
And you're saying this has been a more typical other than the use of plants, which you do, it's a more typical way of developing vaccines historically?
Yes, so comparative companies would be Novavax that are in phase 3 in the US. Sanofi is using, it's a different technology, but it's still a recombinant protein-based approach. And there's many approved vaccines that are based on a technology that we call recombinant protein.
And if you don't use plants, what would you use to do a recombinant protein vaccine?
So you could use mammalian cell culture. You can use, in the case of Sanofi, it's insect cell culture. So there's other living organism you can use. Traditionally, vaccines were viruses that were inactivated and not really easy to produce for the coronaviruses. So this is why we rely mainly on recombinant proteins. In our case, we use plants because plants are the only one to be able to assemble the protein as a virus-like particle. This is another unique aspect of what we have developed.
Fascinating. And the other companies that are developing it with some new methodology, what's that methodology and how is it different from recombinant proteins?
So the vaccine that are approved are, most of them are mRNA vaccine. So it's the information, the genetic information that is administered as a vaccine, and it's the body producing the antigen. So it's totally different. It's chemical. So this is why they're able to scale up relatively quickly, because it doesn't involve growing a living organism and getting, either the recombinant protein or something else out of it. So it's totally synthetic. It's a new technology. There was no vaccine approved for mRNA technology until the pandemic. So this is why, like for any vaccine, by the way, we need to closely monitor efficacy and safety over a long period of time.
I had understood that the Moderna vaccine was a different methodology than the other ones. Is that true?
Well, there are differences in the way they package the mRNA and administer it, but basically this is the same principles, if I may say.
What does mRNA stand for, please?
Messenger RNA, so it's a nucleic acid code for production of protein. So this is really the genetic information that will tell the cell you need to produce that protein.
And will your vaccine need to be super chilled or cooled like some of the vaccines right now?
No, it doesn't need to be cold. It's kept at very cold temperature. This is a vaccine that should be kept in a refrigerator 2 to 8 degrees. So typical of any licensed vaccine, except the recent COVID-19 vaccines.
And is it 1 shot or 2 shots?
2 shots. So in general, when you immunize a population that is naive, meaning that they don't have any background immunity against a disease, you see really a benefit of getting the second shot.
Oh, really? So this applies to almost any vaccine, not just the COVID-19 vaccine?
Think of the pediatric. They never receive a vaccine only once. So they're totally naive. We need to build the immunity against several disease. And in general, they will receive multiple shots at a minimum of 2 for most of the vaccine, I would say.
So I think the numbers, and you may know them better, hopefully you do know them better, are like the first vaccine, the first shot gets you 70 to 80% effective. And it's the second shot that takes you from the 70, 80% up to this 95%. And what I understand is some people, in fact, President-elect Joe Biden is thinking about just giving people the first vaccine so they can distribute it more widely and get everyone up to that 75 to 80%. What do you think?
Well, it depends on the study you look at. So if you dig into the study performed by Pfizer, the efficacy after a single dose was more in the 50% than the 70%. And there was no information provided according to age range, because as you know, we want to immunize adults and the elderly. And I don't know the specifics of what is the efficacy after a single dose in adults compared to the elderly, and I'm sure others have access to privileged information and know that. I haven't seen these data, but there's some level of protection after 1 dose, that's for sure, but it's not the 94, 95% that were reported in the press. This was coming after the second administration. So I'm sure that people analyze those data very carefully and make some analysis with regards, is it better to have more people protected in the zone of 50 to 70% than having half of them fully protected? So I think that was the choice that was made by those groups.
And what do you recommend?
Well, we recommend a 2-dose approach. Of course, we will be monitoring what is the efficacy after the first dose, but we really see a very good immune response after the second dose. So until we get efficacy data, our proposed regimen is a 2-dose.
We're chatting tonight with Ms. Nathalie Landry, the Executive Vice President of Scientific and Medical Affairs for Medicago, who's developing a vaccine for COVID-19. We're going to take a break and come back more with Nathalie in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting with Madame Nathalie Landry, who is the Executive Vice President of Scientific and Medical Affairs for Medicago, a company that's got a manufacturing plant in Quebec City and is developing a vaccine for COVID-19. Ms. Landry, you said that you were in phase 2. Can you describe to us phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, what the process is to get a vaccine through the clinical trial process and submit it to Health Canada for approval?
So in phase 1, in general, you're screening what would be the right dosage for the vaccine in a limited group of people. So this is what we have done in phase 1. We have tested different dose level and different type of adjuvant. And in phase 2, you confirm that your selected dose is safe and immunogenic in more people, and including elderly and other target populations. So this is what is currently ongoing. When you have your data for phase 2, you go to the last step. That is a phase 3. And the objective of the phase 3 is to demonstrate efficacy and safety of the product. So we're not looking at immune response anymore. We're looking if the vaccine can protect against the disease. And those studies are, you enroll a lot of people. In our case, we're talking about 30,000 people will be enrolled in our study. And in order to meet that target enrollment, this is also a global study, will be conducted in up to 11 countries around the world.
And how many people do you have in your phase 2 clinical trial?
It's 900 people we're targeting to enroll. So it's another scale in terms of enrollment. That's the phase 3 is the last step. When you have proven that your vaccine is safe and effective, then you submit your dossier to the regulatory authorities and you get approval.
Your phase 2 will be completed when?
It's staggered enrollment, so the adults are completed. So we're expecting to move into phase 3 in that population shortly. And then a few weeks later will be the elderly population. So it's as per plan. So we're hopeful that we will be able to enroll those 30,000 relatively quickly and get the demonstration during the spring period and then proceed with regulatory approval.
Now, is the phase 3 clinical trial a randomized clinical trial where you have some people that get the vaccine and some people that don't get the vaccine?
This is the only way we have to show efficacy of the vaccine, so you're right. That being said, we're planning for a moment in the trial where once we have demonstrated the efficacy of the vaccine and we get approval for the vaccine, each placebo subject will receive the vaccine. But for a certain period of time, you have two groups, people who are vaccinated and people who are not vaccinated. And this is the way we can demonstrate efficacy.
Tell me, you're the Executive Vice President of Scientific and Medical Affairs. What is the ethical situation in regards to, half of your 30,000 people, so 15,000 people are going to get a vaccine, are going to get a shot, but they're not going to know whether they're vaccinated or not. And so they could get COVID and die.
And in fact, if there was any better way to show the efficacy of the vaccine and still get regulatory approval, we would contemplate that. But according to the way we can get approval of the vaccine and be able to administer it to the general population, this is a rule that has been set up. So if you look for the approved vaccine, that was the same rule. They did some trials were 42,000 subjects, and we're looking for disease, of course. And if there's any disease, of course, the subject will be followed until resolution. We don't want anybody to die. But according to the regulatory requirement, we need to demonstrate efficacy. And so far, there's no other way to demonstrate efficacy.
And effectively, you really need to get some of the people in the placebo arm to be infected. Otherwise, you won't prove that your arm with the vaccine is actually better. So you need to get some of them infected.
Yeah, well, we need, yes. So we want the vaccine to protect against the disease. And there's a lot of people enrolled in the study. They're not all the cases, they don't die. To be frank, it's not everybody who is infected by COVID who will die, but we cannot guarantee either. But that's the rule. So eventually, when they will be correlates of protection. And correlates of protection means a measurement, something you can measure in the blood that will tell if you're protected or not. When that will be available, that will be a way to get additional vaccine approved. But we're probably at least a year from having those correlates being established. So meanwhile, the only way to demonstrate that you have a safe and effective vaccine is to demonstrate it.
It seems that in some of these trials, we almost had a sense of the statistics, the efficacy during the trial. And I always thought that with these trials, you weren't allowed to take a look at the results till the end. Are you going to be able to, break the blinds and take a look at the efficacy during the trial and maybe give it to others for compassionate use reasons as the trial is ongoing?
That's a very good question. So there's statistical analysis, and in our case, there's a number of cases we need. According to our expectation of the target efficacy, we will have enough power to demonstrate to the regulators that, this vaccine is effective. So it's a matter of enrolling a lot of people and getting a few cases in your study. This is where you look, when you have these cases, you look at your efficacy. If you plan correctly, you have enough data. And this is, as I was referring to, a moment where we will be in the position to offer the vaccine to the placebo recipient. But there's going to be a few weeks during which everybody will not know if they have received the vaccine and the placebo. And once we will have accumulated enough cases according to our calculation, this is where we will be able to look at the results.
There has been a bunch of questions about the vaccine that some people haven't been able to answer. In fact, Tony Fauci, the head of the NIH in the United States, hasn't been able to answer. And I wonder if you have a point of view. One of the questions that they get asked often is, if you get the vaccine, can you still catch the virus and transmit it to someone else, even if you don't get sick?
This is a very good question. And again, I'm sure everybody will appreciate the logistic of monitoring for the disease. So we need to call the study subject on a regular basis, make sure if they have any symptom, because this is how you think you can know that you have been infected. But to make sure that you can prevent shedding, you need to monitor those subjects on a daily basis for a long period of time. And this is in terms of logistic, very, very complex. So I don't think that there's a lot of data showing if the vaccine will prevent you to develop the disease. This is what it is designed for. This is what the efficacy data are supporting. So you have 95% efficacy, meaning you will not get the disease. Will that prevent you of acquiring the virus and you won't develop the disease, but you will have still a virus replicating for a short period of time and you could infect others? I haven't seen data, and I'm not sure that we have a clear answer to that question yet.
But logically, if you're exposed to the virus and it goes into your respiratory system, and right now it would appear that people can have the virus and they don't develop the disease or they don't develop symptoms for a week or two. The incubation time period seems to be a long period of time. If you've got antibodies that the vaccines develop that are going to get rid of the disease or not allow you to get the disease, they're going to combat the disease. By definition, don't you have that virus within you for a while before it's killed, before it's developed from the virus inside of you?
For a few days. And you're right. So the vaccine induces an immune response that will, once you're infected, the immune response will take control, will eliminate the virus, will eliminate the infected cells, but this is not a matter of a few seconds. So there could be some viral replication for a few days. Is it enough to infect someone? I think it's your question.
Yes.
Are we controlling? Are we sure that during that short period of time when your immune system is fighting the virus and clearing the virus from your body, is there a chance that you can still infect someone? I'm not sure that we have that answer. Technically, the risk should be much lower than if you don't have an immune response and the virus is simply amplifying while your immune system is trying to control. If you already have an immune response, technically that should be way better than not having any immune response. But to which extent, I don't know.
I've heard that the vaccine hasn't been tested in pregnant females. Why?
It's always the last target population that is being evaluated, because that requires significant preclinical testing. Those are specialty evaluation to make sure that there's no risk for the baby. So you need to complete all these preclinical studies and accumulate safety information in adults before starting to evaluate the vaccine in pregnant women. So it's a matter of time. It's just to complete all that evaluation at the preclinical level.
So if you think you're going to be approved in the summertime for regular adults, when is seniors, children, and pregnant females going to be studied and approved?
So our goal is to have adults and seniors approved at the same time, and at that time we will start evaluating the vaccine in the pediatric population and pregnant women. I don't see that being an additional addition to our label before end of the year.
In the United States and in Canada, we've heard about big purchases by the federal governments of at-risk vaccine development. Have you successfully negotiated some sales already?
Yes, with the Canadian government. So they have a secure supply to up to 76 million doses. So we have a commitment with the Canadian government to start delivering doses by the end of this year. And this is why our timelines are critical, and we want this product to be approved during summer, because Canada has reserved doses for our vaccine upon regulatory approval.
We've heard a lot of controversy about different nations wanting to keep their own vaccine production and PPE production for themselves, and issues in regards to global supply chains. Do you think that that's a risk, and is that one of the reasons why the federal government, the Canadian federal government, should be buying from a Canadian company?
Well, we have seen that it's always an asset to have vaccine capacity in your country, so that it's a way to secure the supply. So this is certainly an asset. And I agree with you, the global supply is something that is beyond the control of people producing those vaccines. Fortunately, there's a group named COVAX, led by WHO, that is partnering with the countries who have access to vaccine and could have excess vaccine doses available, to make sure that they are centralized and eventually redistributed to each country. But then again, it's a matter of being able to negotiate with a local supplier versus relying on others. So some have been more successful than others.
This new variant that has really, skyrocketed in the UK and Brazil, and looks like it's coming to Canada. Will all vaccines, will your vaccine be effective against it?
We're evaluating that right now. So we're looking if the immune response induced by the vaccine could recognize those variants. I don't have the data yet. According to what is in the literature, it seems that for the UK variant, it should be okay. For the others, well, they have more mutation at critical spot on the virus. So it is to be demonstrated. Hopefully it's going to be okay, but the data are not available yet.
I heard one infectious disease expert say that he thought COVID-19 was going to be with us forever, that it might come back every season, and that it would mutate by definition. And so we may have to have a new COVID-19 vaccination every year or second year, just like the flu shot. What do you think about that?
Well, the coronavirus is of the same type than influenza. So it's a virus that is known to mutate. And I think this is clearly what we're seeing with these emerging mutants, whether it's the UK strain or from South Africa or Brazil. So the virus circulates, and this is while it's circulating that it will start to mutate. This is the way it will evolve. And therefore, to the question, is this, are coronaviruses with us for a long time? I think the answer is clearly yes. With regards to the need to have a booster shot, I think it's fair to say that it's highly probable that we will need eventually a booster shot because the virus will have mutated, so the previous vaccine will be much less effective. The frequency, we don't know. Because we don't know the current vaccine, they will protect against those variants. We don't know that, and for how long. So we need to accumulate these data to really determine the frequency of booster shot. And this is what the community, the scientific community, is looking at. And I think I agree with the fact that coronaviruses are here to stay. They will mutate. Will the vaccine be effective? It's an unknown, and this is why we need the manufacturing capacity for a coronavirus vaccine to be maintained.
There's a bunch of people that are anti-vaxxers that don't believe in it, believe that there's some conspiracy with Bill Gates or I don't know who else to do something. What do you tell them?
I would tell them that the vaccine, they save thousands and thousands of lives, and the life expectancy in children, for example, is way better than it was before vaccination. So really, you know, we're healthcare professional, and we want to participate to eradicate this pandemic or get it under control, and really there's no time for conspiracy whatsoever. So we produce a vaccine for the health of people, and clearly vaccines have been proven to be very useful over decades and centuries, and they're saving lives. So I would encourage, and you know, the amount of data that we need to provide to regulators before the vaccine is approved, and even when it's approved, we constantly monitor for any safety signal or whatsoever. So I think the general population should really trust the vaccine that are getting licensed, and should use them according to the recommendation by the different governments.
Some of these anti-vaxxers think that vaccinations cause, I don't know what it is, Asperger's or something like that in kids and teenagers. Is there any analysis of that? Any proof of that?
Well, there's more proof that they cannot induce such reaction, and of course this is something that you administer in one body, you know, and the risk is very, very, very low for any unwanted side effect. Asperger and autism are not proven side effect of vaccination at all. So there's more literature proving that it's not the case than data demonstrating that it could be.
If you were the Minister of Health or the head of public health for Canada, and you announced your vaccination, what would you be telling everybody?
Please get the vaccine. It's a good way to protect yourself. And you know, while you're getting your it's not because you get your first dose that you should stop wearing masks and practice social distancing, because a first dose don't get you up to the 95% efficacy. So we still need to have good measure in place, but I would certainly encourage people to go to the vaccination clinic and get their shot. This is how we will get to more people being protected, and we can go back to kind of normal.
You're the head of medical and scientific affairs. What keeps you up at night? What are you worried about?
The tight timelines and the so many things we need to do to make sure that we do the right thing, we have the right data, and we're doing it in time. Medicago is close to 500 employees in Canada and in US. So it's a small group compared to, for example, a Pfizer or even a Moderna. There's a few thousand people in there. So we're a small team, we're dedicated, and there's so many things to be done, because normally a vaccine will require 5 to 8 years before getting to the market. We do everything within 1 year. So there's many things being done in parallel. So everybody is working, very long hours, and really we're concentrated on our job. And what keeps me awake at night is seeing that we still have that second wave that is not under control. And the sooner we'll have the vaccine being deployed and enough vaccine, the faster we will go back to normal life. So this is the motivation for everybody at Medicago.
Thank you so much for joining us. And given your challenge and the challenge we are all faced with COVID-19, I wish you the best of luck and speed in achieving those milestones. Madame Nathalie Landry, the Executive Vice President of Scientific and Medical Affairs for Medicago, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about your vaccine development.
My pleasure.
And if I could just echo, get the vaccine, but also don't stop wearing that mask and don't stop physically distancing. Stay socially close, but physically distant, and wash your hands. Thanks so much, everybody. Good night.